Ready?
Yeah.
So as I was saying, last class we looked at irrigation. Do you remember what is the definition for irrigation? Anybody? Yes?
Irrigation is the process by which you supply the plant with sufficient water.
The process by which you supply the plants with sufficient water. The artificial way to give plants water. Anybody else would like to try? Do you agree with what your two colleagues are saying? So what is irrigation together as a class?
Irrigation is the artificial application of water to the soil to ensure an adequate supply of moisture to the crop.
Good. So it's us artificially applying water to the soil to ensure that it has some amount of moisture and it does not dry up, right? What are the sources of irrigation? Where can we get this water from? Well, stream, reservoirs, rain, that's a natural way, right? Ponds, pump, hand pump, like pumping the water from somewhere. Okay. Good. So we know what is irrigation. We know the sources coming. Now we have to look at the methods of which we get this water from the river or the pond. How do we get the water? From the pond to the plants. What are the methods? Sprinkler, drip, channel. Good. So now we know how is it we water the plant, the sources that we can get this water from. So now today we're going to move on to the next point, which is weeds, right? So today's topic, weed control, right? How many of you have ever planted before? Good. Take your hands down. So, have you ever seen other plants growing in the space that you would have planted the plant that you would want, or the crop? Good. So those are the plants that we refer to as weed. Any plant that is growing where we don't want it is considered a weed. Fair?
No, it was good. No, I read
Good. So a weed is actually a plant that is growing where it is not wanted. Clear? Read the definition, please.
Plant growing in a place where it is not wanted is termed as a weed.
Good. So, do you know of any common weed? Zebgrass. Which other one? Rabbit grass. Do you know how they affect the plant? How? Stand and tell us. The weed take all the nutrients that the plant has to get. Anybody else? I'm listening. Yes?
The weeds stifle the plant.
The weeds stifle the plant. Next. Anybody else? There are more. The weeds stop the plant from growing. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
But how? How it would stop the plant from growing? The nutrients. Good. So when we say the weed is going to stop the plant from growing, remember, just think of it as two sets of plant in the one environment on the one bed, and say plant A is our crop, so it's our borer. Plant B is the weed, right? Say the zebrass, like your colleague indicated. Now remember, we're all in this one space. I need nutrients from the soil, you need nutrients from the soil. So we're going to be in a competition, right? And most times, the weed will actually outrun your crop, right? And it will compete for the nutrients in the soil, it will compete for the sunlight, the air, the space, and your plant will eventually be stunted, and in some instances, it will die, right? Good. So I'm going to give you some other points as it relates to the harmful effect. how it affects the plant. The first one says weed competes with crop plants for nutrients, sunlight, moisture, and space, like I would have explained earlier. Then secondly, weed harbor insects and pests, right? So once the weed is there, the bugs, the larvae, the caterpillars, and so forth, they're likely to go to get their food. They're going to feed on these weeds, and they're going to likely be around your crop. That will eventually start feeding on your crops. Okay? Then another one, some weeds are poisonous to men and livestock. For example, the poison ivy and so forth, and this stinging nettle grass. Once they are amongst your grass, and it will scratch the farmer's skin, right? And some of them will even affect the livestock too, right? So that's why we say it's not only poison men in this farm is the same as the farmer, right? But it will not only affect the farmer, but also the livestock. It also increases the cultivation costs. And another point too, it also increases your entire care and maintenance procedure, because what will happen when you constantly have to hire someone to get rid of the weeds, it's going to be costly, right? So now we're going to look at some common weeds. I have a poster.
Okay.
Can someone please help me put up this cardboard?
Yes, come on in, class. Just a minute. For the persons who have to bring your birth certificate, can I have it?
So we're going to look at some common weed, and you're going to tell me which one you've ever seen before. Seen them before? But they are very common, that you can find them in the yard, okay? But, so the first one is the dandelion. You know that flower that you take and you spin it and you blow and name it. This parts, that's the dandelion. And then we have the goose grass. This one you will normally find it in those pastures where the cows will graze. And then we have purslane. This is another type, and then we have the nut grass. I know for sure everyone is familiar with this nut grass, right? And there are others like the carpet grass, the chickweed, but I didn't get to place all of the pictures, but I can, yeah. This is an example of the carpet grass. This one, the reason why they give it a name, because it runs flat, like in clusters, so they call this one the carpet grass. This also affects our crop by competing for the space, harboring pests, carpet. You've seen it in the yard. So the next one we're going to go outside. I have a smaller picture of it that you can see for the persons that are not seeing clearly. Just pass this down and pass this down. Good. So we know what are weeds, the harmful effects. We have some examples. Please take notes of these examples in your book. Yeah, we have razor grass. There's one that we commonly call it the lazy tooth. Good. Good. So now we know the harmful effects of weeds. We know some common examples. Now, as a farmer, you will need to know how to control this weed. Everyone is finished writing here? Can I use here?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Good. So now we know what these weeds do to our plants or our crops. We need to know how to control them. What are some of the things you think a farmer can do to control the weeds?
Yes.
Pull them. Next. Poison them. What are we using to poison them? What kind of spray? We could just go and get a spray bottle and spray water. Pesticides. How we using pesticide for weeds though? There's a pest. What? Fertilizer. Are we fertilizing the weed? You want the weeds to grow? No, someone else. So we know we can pull them out with your hand, right? Next one. I am listening.
Miss, we use regularly.
You could use a cutlass. Well, this will come under the seat. Alright, we're going to use hand pulling. We're going to cut them with a cutlass, right?
Miss, cutting them
Yeah.
regularly.
You can use a cutlass. What else? How y'all is clean your yard? Y'all going to pull out the grass. But we're not going to rake it because remember you want to get it out. Raking is you're going to take it out. Using a slasher. But the thing is, all the points that you would have listed come under one method of weed control, which is the mechanical part of it, where you're going to either use your hands, the cutlass, right, or hoeing and so forth. There are other parts. But there are other methods like the chemical control. It's not pesticide, but you use herbicide, right? When we have pest infestation, we use the pesticide. We use the herbicide, right? And you know what are herbs, right? So that's why we use the herbicide. Then we have biological control. So we have mechanical, come on, I'm hearing too much noise, where we use hand pulling. Pay attention because at the end, we have a quick hand pulling. Another one can be pulling. we have chemical. And what we using for the chemical control? Good. Do you know of any herbicide that we can use? You ever hear of Gramatone? You can burn them also. Good. So for chemical, we are using good. Then we have biological. I think you will find this biological control very interesting. So, biological control, do you know what is biological control? So with the biological control, what we do, we use insect, right, that can feed on these weeds, right, but it will not feed on the crop that you're planting. Say for example, most times we use the lethal, and we just use it in the garden, and it will know that, you know what, this is, say for example, it enjoy the dandelion, it will feed on the dandelion, and eventually the population will die, and your crop that you would have planted will survive, right? Yes, we're using the insects to get rid of the weeds, because in some cases, right? No, it's not going to kill the new crops. Because remember, each specific animal will have a specific feed or food that they would prefer to have, right? Good. Now we have the cultural control. So with the cultural control, this is whereby we use crop rotation. Like if this time we're planting Bora and we realize that aphid is affecting our Bora, we're going to plant something else. Something in a sense that the aphids will not try to eat or live on it, right? So you use either crop rotation, you rotate the crop, or you plant a plant or a crop that is able to withstand either of these common pests. So you're going to put a crop that is strong, meaning that regardless of if it has some dandelion, some nut grass or so in the environment, it will not affect it because it is strong, right? It can thrive in any condition, under any condition, right? Yes. And mulching. But I don't want to go in depth with mulching because we will look at this lesson another day, right? But we're going to look at these. Good. So that is it. So we looked at what are weeds. What are weeds, class?
With a plant growing in a place where it is not wanted, it serves as weed.
Good. What are some ways in which a weed affects our crop?
Science takes all the nutrients, does not give the plant enough space and growth.
The boys to the back. Tell me one way in which the weed affects the crop. Takes up space, yes. It attracts insects or it causes insects to come to the plant, insects and pests. Come in. You, tell me one way in which the weeds affect the crop. It can stifle the crop. Good. And what are some ways that we can control the weed population on our farm? Mechanical control. And what comes under mechanical control? Hand pulling or using the hoe, right? What about chemical control? We're using herbicides such as Bramazole and so forth, right? Good. Then with the biological control, we're using an insect to feed on the weed, right? Then we have cultural control, where we do some crop rotation, some mulching, etc. And here you have some common crops, right? Good. So this has brought us to the end of our lesson.